Hi there, it's Anthony from Evolution Series, and I'm so proud to present my latest library with the team here at Native Instruments. It's called Odes. It continues on that storytelling tradition of Lores and Fables. If you already know, Lores and Fables are textual-based libraries, and they focus on capturing life and realism and mojo and that randomness that happens within a sustain. Odes is a slightly different beast. We wanted to do something new, like us all creatives, we like a change. Odes focuses on tempo sync rhythm, whereas Lores and Fables is about randomness. They all work amazingly together. I sampled 15 beautifully talented musicians. It was amazing experience. And you can just hear how all those instruments, when you blend them together, you can come up with some pretty cool concoctions. So if you've ever been playing with your shakuhachi and Lores and wish that it would lock into your tempo, then Odes is the instrument. I could keep on going about how great this thing is, but I reckon we just got to check it out, all right? The thing is, in this video, I will go over the interface. I won't spend too long because it's the same as Lores and Fables. You can check out the description below if you want more info. I will have a play through some pretty cool presets and then look at a demo track I wrote at the end. Okay, other than that, let's go and have a bit of fun and listen. Odes' homepage has two key sections, the Instrument Selector section and the Articulations section. In the Instrument section, you can load up to 3 different instruments by clicking here on the little magnifying glass. And then within the section, you'll notice 16 different instrument choices. We have alto flute, bass clarinet, cello, double bass, horse fiddle, hurdy-gurdy, Comanche, nickel harper, pads, pan flute, shakuhachi, tenor recorder, tenor sax, viol bass, viol tenor, and viol treble. So there's a lot of good choices here. So you can load up to 3 of these instruments at one time. So if we choose to load something, let's click on something random like bass clarinet, and we'll just choose any one preset here, doesn't really matter. Now we've loaded up a bass clarinet. So the second section is where you can choose your articulations. You can have up to 3 different articulations loaded. So in this case, we're going to just clear all this out, make it a nice empty clean slate, and here we can load an articulation. For each instrument, you'll have a whole host of different articulations to choose from. It really is pretty impressive, the amount of content. So here, let's just load up something, gliss up. Now we've loaded an articulation. Simple as that, right? So for each articulation you load, you'll have these controls available. You can assign different volume, pan, pitch, attack, release for every different articulation, and then you'll have individual mapping controls and filter controls for each articulation. There really is a lot of flexibility there to kind of craft something pretty cool. On the home page, which is pretty important, is once again this little triangle. If you click and hold that triangle, you'll notice it getting larger and smaller. You can move it left or right. What that is doing is it's controlling the virtual scoring stage. So if you go larger triangle, it means that the instrument, the bass clarinet, is going further back in the room. But then if you bring it in, make it a tiny little triangle, that means it's a much closer sounding recording of the instrument. So it's focusing more on the close mics versus the room mics. These are real microphones we're dealing with, like all the room mics and everything. These are not IR responses or anything like that. These are actual recordings that it's playing with here. But what is an IR is this little one down here. This is a convolution reverb. It's an additional reverb that can be quite nice to add a little bit of a reverb bed So if you load a preset and then you decide that, well, I just want it to be roomier or closer, you can please have a play around with these. You can change the panning and the room placement. And then you can also, if you find that this is too loud for your liking, you can always reduce it. Also on the home page we have mod wheel, we've got noise. This is a room noise. If you wish to have it, you can yank it on to hear a bit of room rumble. We generally have that off by default, but if you like that sort of thing, it's there. We have a EQ boost and a little bit of a compression boost there. We also have expression. This one's pretty important when playing. The expression, actually, if we jump back to our lovely little articulations, quite often presets will be set up with, say, 3 different articulations in there, and the expression will move between those articulations. So if you have the expression down, for example, it will play one set of samples and then it will kind of morph between the different layers as it's going up to the highest point of expression. It really adds a lot of interest and drama there, and you'll hear a bit of that too when I'm playing through the presets. And this is the advanced section. I won't be going over every single detail here, but simply we've got velocity, voicing, and aftertouch. Aftertouch is for those lovely folk who have keyboards that support aftertouch. It really isn't a vital thing to have aftertouch for this library. It's something that if you've got it, you'll have a lot of fun because there is some cool stuff here. But if you haven't, you're still going to have a lot of fun. In the end of the day, it really is just a bonus, and you'll get a lot of mileage out of this library even if you don't have it. And the last thing to show really is the this area up here. This is where you access all those lovely presets. Over 300 of them. It's crazy. So let's check it out. Let's have a listen. As a reminder, I probably won't be speaking too much during this section. I'll just keep it more focused on the sound. That way we can get through a few more sounds than hearing me just talk. Okay, let's check it out. As you heard there, I was using expression to bring in another layer of sound. So it started off in a more cleaner flutando, and then we had the salponti come in, which was pretty nice. Okay, let's have a look in this category. Okay, next. Sometimes when I'm playing through these presets, the aftertouch is actually affecting it, so you might hear a little bit of filtering happening at times. If you don't want to use the aftertouch and you have an aftertouch keyboard, you can easily turn that off. Okay, and on to this one. we are. I was just having a little play with the poly aftertouch there at the end, just added a little bit of filter into it, which was fun. Now we've heard a bit of a cross-section of sounds. There's a lot more in there. This was just a little bit of what really is a pretty massive library. Okay, so let's check out a track that I wrote. I'll get the session up. Here we've got the track that I composed to demonstrate Odes, actually, and it was ultimately used for the Odes trailer. And look, I think it's a great idea to be able to just see how I approached using some of these sounds. I feel quite often with a lot of new libraries that come out into the world that sometimes people will give it a go but not really truly understand how much you can get done with some of these libraries. I mean, I honestly, I set myself a goal where this piece of music had to primarily just consist of odes, lores and fables, with a little bit of percussion from some of my other libraries. But overall, this is, I would say, 90% just those three libraries. And it just made me think how much really is possible with these things. So I feel it's a good idea to go through and check out the parts and see how it was made. That way, hopefully you might learn something. Firstly, I'll play the mastered version. The only difference is with this one is that I ran it through a nice little external EQ and API EQ just to give it a bit of extra analog goodness. So we'll check that one out first, and then we'll hear the track broken down. There we go. So nice and large and epic was always the key with this track. Now, if I go here, mute that. So we can see the instrument is broken down into odes sounds, fables, all of these ones, plus this green one here, lores, which I ended up converting into audio, and I'll explain that in a mo. And then we've got some additional ones in red here. There's a little bit of my Buku library, just very subtle, a little bit of a sub bass, and I used some hits from Action Drums and a bunch from my own world percussion ensembles. So yeah, there's a few different things, but I would say 90% of all of this is odes, fables, and lores. So look, let's start at the top and we'll work our way down. Let's just listen to what Odes is doing. We'll go through some of these here. So I was just pointing out here, I ended up using expression. So as you could see, it started off with expression all the way down, and then when it reached bar 13, expression jumped up, and then you got into that ducka 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 kind of thing. All that's really doing is, I mean, here I'm just using this collapse global preset, no changes, just using it as is. And yeah, I just threw up the expression. It was very, very simple. I just played in the part. And I think this was probably the first thing that I played in. And as you can see, if I remove this, as you can see, it just repeats. It's just the same part repeating over again. So that there times 3. And then from bar 13, the only key difference is I yanked up the expression. So let's move on to the next one. And there that just repeats. So that's just simple. There wasn't really any expression going. I was just using this patch as is. No, nothing too fancy. Check out the next bit. Hurdy-gurdy. Here we are. Now, what I ended up doing here is I think I just loaded up the cornfield patch, but I may have loaded the hurdy-gurdy and added in the bit, an articulation myself. I just wanted that. So sometimes that's what I do. I'll just get in there and load an instrument and then load the articulations myself instead of hunting around trying to find a preset that suits my needs. I create one that fits exactly what I'm after, which I think is a very good thing to try and do because honestly there's so much in here, so much. So let's have a listen to the hurdy-gurdy. Yeah, so just repeats that, very simple. And then we'll check out the horse fiddle. And once again, you can see here the same old cornfield preset, but the horse fiddle's there for a change. So I just ended up looking for the horse fiddle and then wanted a different articulation, which was that suited this track a bit better. And we'll go here, the Comanche. So very, very simple. If I click on here, you'll be able to see the UI. Yep, there we are, the Comanche there. So if we click on here, you can see I'm using this complex motif 1. If you click on here, you can see there's really so much stuff in here. You can just be playing around. Just working with singular instruments is so much fun. You can load up these presets, mute everything except for one instrument, and just play because you may not always need 3 instruments playing at one time, or even 2 for that matter. You might just want 1. You just might want only the Comanche or the hurdy-gurdy, which obviously you saw in this case, because it's nice to compose just with singular instruments. And here is the shakuhachi, so we'll have a quick listen. And then at the end, I've just got a little rhythmic thing going on. And, once again, just using a singular shakuhachi. And we've got some pan flute bits here. Yep. And onwards to Fables. Oh, but actually, before that, if I just solo all the odes, you can get a bit of an idea how they sound together. Pretty large. See, just with odes by itself, you can do some pretty full sounding productions. Here for Fables, we've got some low horns. I just used this preset here called Dynamic Reflections. I can just play you. It's just the same low part here, and then there's a little high melody. You can kind of see it come in here. I mean, that sounds pretty full. I mean, that I love those low brass patch there. It's very, very nice to use. And we have some celestial voices. Which, I mean, those voices are lovely, really lovely. And there's a ton of content in Fables there with voice, a huge amount. We sampled a number of days of vocal recordings for that project. Now here, I'll just highlight all these gongs and low booms. Instead of going one by one, you can get a bit of an idea. So it's simply just those those sounds repeating themselves, but there's just some really nice atonal percussion in Fables, really atmospheric. So I ended up using those ones there. A little ambient guitar. Very atmospheric. It's just a lovely little EBO patch there. And as some of you may notice, I'm using Black Hole. I absolutely love that plugin. It's an instant mojo maker. You can stick it on anything and it sounds great. Here we've got Lores, but as you can see, it's audio. I wanted the vocal performances to hit exactly on the correct points, so I ended up deciding to record it as audio. It was easier that way. That way I was able to just do some subtle time stretching. But man, there's some beautiful vocal performances in Lores. So have a good look, because you'll definitely find a gem or two in there. I can play those for you. Yeah, they're just lovely. So they just added a bit of nice vibe throughout the track. And then here is just a little bit of buku. I won't spend too much time on this, but you'll just get an idea on what else I've used. So just a little, it's just more of a sonic filler. And then a simple sub bass. Nothing too fancy there, but it's just so you know, I was using Diva for that one. And Percussion Land. Here we've got just some subtle action strike hits. Now I'm mainly using those for a little bit of definition, but when you add my world percussion, yeah, and then if you really want to get crazy, we can add the Fables percussion. So it sounds pretty huge, nice and epic. Well, in a nutshell, this is the track. You can kind of hear how things are broken down in their little pieces. I mean, really, you can do so many cool things with these libraries. So I think the key takeaways for me with all of this is that you need to explore these products. I mean, Lores, Fables, Odes. If you're just using the global presets, as amazing and as wonderful as they are, and inspiring as they can be, sometimes you miss out on some little gold hiding in there if you just go and explore that little bit more. You know, simply load up Odes, go into a preset here, turn everything off except for one, and go, okay, let's find an instrument. Let's find, say, shakuhachi, and then load any old preset. And what I like to do is I'll click on here. Whoop, we need that little thing there. Click on there, and then let's get rid of all of that. Empty it out, clear it. Now it's nice and empty, and dive in, have a look, find an articulation, and just play and explore. You know, just grab that, have a look, and then play with this. Go closer, go further away in the room, explore some of these things, and you're gonna find all sorts of gems that way, and then craft your piece one instrument at a time instead of just relying on global presets. I think that's another great way of learning to maximize the usage of this library, or any library really for that matter, but especially with these ones in particular, as this is how these ones work. It's just one instrument at a time. And look, another thing too that's really, really important to understand is that, especially Odes uses Time Machine Pro. It's quite hungry. It uses a lot of processor, a lot of juice. So to be able to hold down 100 notes and play like a crazy person, you're probably going to get little clicks and pops and things happening. So what I like to do is minimize the number of notes that you use when you're writing and working, especially with larger global presets. Minimize how many notes you're playing, because the more instruments playing, the more notes that you're playing, the more, you know, Time Machine Pro has to work harder. So one sort of tip that I could say is break your track down into parts. As you can see, I've done them in some individual instruments. Some are using a full preset, but I'm keeping the note use kind of minimal. And when I need to use more notes, I'll create another instance of Contact and then fill it up that way and just build my track in stages. I think that is probably the one of the biggest technical things to understand when using this product so you can get the most out of it. Well, I think it's about time we finished up. I hope you had a little bit of fun and learned something along the way. For more information, such as audio demos and all the other goodies that you'd want, head to the Odes product page at nativeinstruments.com. Until next time, cheers.